Sup, people? My name is Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie. Thanks for watching. I am currently ranking and reviewing the Bob Dylan studio albums, the official sort of canon, not counting the live albums or the bootleg series or any other interesting releases Dylan may have had. Doing these by tiers. I tend to talk a lot and didn't want to make a really long video, so had a C tier, which was 31 through 26. Album number 31 through 26, B tier, which was 25 through 17. So the first of the A tier, which is this video, will start with number 16. I started this channel to do only things related to Frank Zappa, and Dylan falls under the Big Note Frank Zappa umbrella for a lot of reasons. Most notably, Flakes, the homage in Flakes. There are other connections, but one I keep failing to mention, and it has been pointed out in the comments, so thank you to those of you who have pointed it out, is that, all those comments. Dylan, at one point in time, just showed up at Frank's door, or at his gate, to be exact, wanted Frank to produce some songs. This was after his third evangelical album. So the stuff that I guess would eventually be Infidels. Frank was going to do it, but then Dylan went on vacation to the Bahamas. Apparently Dylan came in, played the songs on some of the songs on piano. Frank agreed. Frank's dog barked at Dylan at one point, and Frank quipped that his dog don't like Christians, and Dylan apparently did not even smile. So maybe that's why he went on vacation. Who knows? But anyways, there is that connection, and boy, would that have been interesting. But didn't happen. So anyways, that's it. So yeah, these are the A tier albums. Albums that are pretty great. Probably not, obviously not as great as S tier stuff. Maybe not consistently great. Maybe a couple of them if they had been trimmed a little bit, or maybe they're just so short that no, that's another list. Anyways, yeah, just A tier albums. These are fantastic albums. This is Dylan's A tier. This is not the world's A tier. This is Dylan's A tier. So some of these would probably be A tier if I were comparing them to other artists, but I'm comparing them to other Dylan albums. So these are my A tier Dylan albums. Enough yakking, on to number 16. Number 16, Desire. This came out in 1976. This was the follow-up to Basement Tapes and Blood on the Tracks. Decidedly different sound than both of those. Has a really nice, really good sound. A lot of Scarlett Rivera, I don't think it's Rivera on violin, adds a nice texture to a lot of these songs. A really eclectic group of songs. Hurricane is on here, which is like this, 8-minute song about a true life song about a boxer who was accused of murder, Reuben Hurricane Carter. Eventually there was a movie made about him. I think this song was used in it. There's another biographical song, Joey, about a gangster, Joey Gallo, right? So those are the two songs that for me kind of hold this album back. They are both great songs, but they fall victim to what I call the sort of Million Dollar Baby syndrome, that Million Dollar Baby movie, which I think was an incredible movie, but I only saw it once. I have no need to see it again. It was emotionally draining in a way I don't want to re-experience, but I acknowledge that it was a good movie, and my not wanting to see it again is not because it's not a good movie. And that's kind of the way I feel about Hurricane and Joey, is they're just a little too long and a little too straight and narrow of storytelling. Yes, Dylan is being creative and being Dylan, but they're songs that I don't think have as many secrets to reveal as other more sort of, enigmatic, kind of that mysterious Dylan writing that these are lacking a little bit of. Also, I think the Dylan and the Dead live version of Joey off that album is better than this for some reason. So that's another thing. Also, another reason why I put this sort of in an A- category, because that's where I would put it, is the very first Dylan I really got into after Blood on the Tracks. My mom owned Blood on the Tracks forever. I got Biograph for my birthday, either Christmas or my birthday the year it came out. And there's a live version of Isis and there's a live version of Romance in Durango on there. And both of those I think are better than the versions on this album, or at least I knew those versions first, so when I eventually got this album, I was really disappointed with Isis and Romance in Durango because they didn't lack. Isis did not lack the fire, completely lack the firepower of those live versions from this tour, the tour that would follow this, and then Romance in Durango was just a little too studio awkward compared to what I think is a really successful live version. So, anyways, that is the reason why this is an A minus, because I know a lot of people really, really love this album. However, this has one more cup of coffee, which is like S tier Dylan songwriting at its absolute best. One of his just like in like 3.5 minutes and a much sparser set of lyrics, Dylan creates a much more interesting world, I think, in One More Cup of Coffee than he does in either Hurricane and Joey. There's another song on here called Black Diamond Bay, which is another just straight up storytelling Dylan, almost along the lines of something like Lily, Rosemary, and the Jack of Hearts, just this fictional group of characters on this island, and then there's like a volcano erupts, right? And then destroys the island, and people die, and the narrator sees it on the news. Just a really interesting little thing. But again, I think that's more interesting than the true storytelling. I'm talking a lot about this album because I feel like it is a great album and is a representation of like the mid to late 70s. It is like eclectic heaven. There's a duet, Mozambique, that is a really good vibe. The closing Sarah is really strong. There's some good, Isis is a good song. Oh, another problem that I have with this is when I did the Frank Zappa albums, One Size Fits All did not make the top 10 because Can't Afford No Shoes is the second track, and to me it utterly ruins the momentum of that album. I've said a lot about that elsewhere, but I don't want to go back and listen to Hurricane over and over again. Like I'm not compelled in any way to revisit that song. Like I said before, I think its secrets have been revealed. And so that's another reason I bump it down, because if it started with a different song or if Hurricane was somewhere else, I think I would probably revisit it more often, but I don't. But I have to acknowledge that it is a fantastic album and a fantastic listen. And I think it sounds really great. And it has good energy, and every song kind of changes direction in the best way possible. So a really strong album. But yeah, number 16, Desire. Number 15, Love and Theft. This was the second of his like 90s on resurrection great albums. This came out on 9/11. If you're from the United States, I don't need to tell you what year that is. It came out on 9/11, but 2001. And this is, again, more of the sort of pre-rock and roll, early blues, early jazz, like jazzy type, more old-timey type music, but really good. The lyrics are phenomenal. The songwriting is phenomenal. There's a lot of sort of, again, a really good feeling about this. Sometimes Dylan is really, really serious. Sometimes he's really jokey and having fun. Has that really nice balance of like all versions of Dylan, like as his early stuff has, where one moment it's like an anti-war song, the next moment he's joking around and, you know, making jokes about Texas and stuff. Just a really well-balanced album. Lots of highlights on this album. The opening Tweedledee and Tweedledum is kind of a fun, upbeat number. Mississippi, probably one of his all-time best numbers. There were 3 different versions of that on one of the bootleg series releases. And each of those, though only really not dramatically different, just again are stellar because this song is so incredible. Floater is a really good song. High Water for Charlie Patton is probably the best song on here. There's this like little 3-minute number called Poor Boy, which almost feels maybe it's Po Boy, which feels like it could be a throwaway number, but it's like way too short. It's kind of funny. It's just, the whole album is just a really, really good feel-good album. Yeah, Love and Theft. I don't know what else to say about it. It is definitely that current era Dylan, for lack of a better word, old-timey feel, but really well balanced. Lyrics are excellent. Musical choices are excellent. A lot of energy in a lot of the performances. Sounds great. Can't go wrong. Love and Theft. But it's an A tier and not an S tier because there's a couple songs here and there which are just kind of a little too slow, and I don't want to say lifeless, but aren't really treading any new ground. But Dylan is obviously comfortable and having a good time, so they're not enjoyable, but they're not helping lift the album to the next level. But yeah, loving that. Number 14, Bob Dylan. His self-titled, is that right? His self-titled debut album from 1962. This album is just Bob, an acoustic guitar, and a harmonica. And at times, it sounds like you can see him sitting in front of a microphone just performing these songs. The feel is great. The songs are mostly covers. There's only 2 originals, but there are 2 originals, so I'm going to include it on this list. The one is the fun Talking New York, and the other is the absolutely incomparable Song to Woody. One is second song of the album, the other is the penultimate track, so kind of well balanced. But the interesting thing is the covers are all songs that I think most of us know better by other artists who did it later. So it's interesting that Dylan, like, these are the songs he chose to cover, and then other artists would like take them and do miraculous things with them. In My Time of Dying, Led Zeppelin. There is, what else? I'm going to forget them all now. Fixin' to Die, Man of Constant Sorrow, House of the Rising Sun, where I think the Animals version is a little more sinister and like, what are you doing hanging around there? Dylan's version, I think, is a lot lonelier. It's a lot more like, aw, kind of just haunting and lonely. Not haunting, but it's a lonelier, sadder song, sadder take. But just, yeah, there's another really good cover I'm forgetting. Oh, Pretty Peggy-O, which the Dead would do live and just make one of their most just beautiful sort of first set songs, at least when I was seeing them. Yeah, so a great choice of covers. Dylan's energy is amazing. It sounds good. It has an intimate sound quality to it. The 2 originals are like proof that, like, okay, this dude's got talent. And for me, I think the highlight of all the covers is Baby Let Me Follow You Down. It starts off with one of those like, I first heard this song in New York City from a man named Robert or something like that. You know, it just has that intimate, like, you're sitting in a cafe listening to him do this. A fun album, a great album. If somebody released something like this today, it would still be phenomenal. It's just a fun, solid, excellent debut. Bob Dylan, 1962. Number 14, Tempest. This came out in 2012. So this is he has one other new one after that, which was a B tier, Rough and Rowdy Ways. This is again. Him leaning more towards old-timey music, you know, sort of pre-rock and roll type, more bluesy type stuff on here, but that's sort of like different genres. I think there's a little rockabilly thrown in there at one point, some shuffles and stuff like that. But that's the kind of energy. But there is, on this album, this is falls victim to way too long, too many songs. It's like 68 minutes long, and had Dylan cut out 15, possibly 20 minutes of that album, you have an S tier album that ranks up with like the best 48 minutes of music Dylan has made since Blood on the Tracks, I would argue. It is everything from track 5, Pay in Blood, on. Pay in Blood is just a really strong, interesting song that is a really interesting tempo shift that a lot of like Dylan songs do not have. Early Roman Kings, I think it's just, I don't know why, but it's one of the most fun thing he's ever done, and it just brings me great joy. Scarlet Town is amazing. The last 3 songs, the first one is sort of about a love triangle, you know, sort of that kind of thing. The second one is sort of about the Titanic, but also about like everything, of course, because it's Dylan. And the last one sort of centers around John Lennon, but of course makes commentary on other stuff. Those 3 songs alone are over 30 minutes long. I think you have like a 9-minute, a 13-minute, and like an over 7-minute song. So they're really long songs, but they're incredibly compelling, and I want to go back and revisit them, and at times they're funny. Dylan's throwing in a lot of like, the John Lennon one has a lot of really interesting John Lennon Beatles references that he does well. Kind of obvious that he's doing it, but he does it well. But yeah, the last, I don't know, it's like the last 2/3 of this album is an S tier, almost phenomenal album. The problem with it is the first 4 songs, not even the first one. The first one is called Duquesne Whistle. It would work well before Pay in Blood. It's kind of a lot more, it's a really more, you know, lighthearted, kind of up-tempo, like sitting on the porch type number that includes right towards the very end this like written piece of music that almost sounds like jazzy, like a composed jazz piece that is like nothing else you hear in Dylan, and it lasts for like 5 seconds, but it's like, whoa, what was that? And so if you had that, and then but then the next three songs are just, they're not forgettable, they're not bad, but they just aren't as inspired as everything else. And so those three songs, tracks 2, 3, and 4, bring this down to the A tier for me. But once you hit Pain and Blood on, like, I almost recommend, like, if you're gonna check this album out, skip those first four songs. Like, listen to Pay and Blood on. That's like over 45 minutes worth of music. You'll have such an amazing experience that then you'll eventually be able to go back and listen to those first four and go, okay, yeah, like there's value in this album, because I think if you listen to those first four, you might check out before you get to Pay and Blood. They're not bad, but they're definitely not fire. They're definitely not fire. But anyways, that's it. This is a really good album. The last 2/3 of this, phenomenal stuff. Tempest, number 13. Number 12, The Times They Are a Changin'. The only reason this is number 12 is I had to make room for 11 others. Like, there's nothing wrong with this album at all. It is. Why is it A tier? Maybe there is one song I don't like, or maybe it is a little more somber than some of his other ones. But it's a fantastic album. So, what was I going to say? Oh, for just proof of its brilliance, go back and listen to the title track. Just go back and listen to the title track. He wrote this in 1964. Like, it still applies to, like, everything. Everything. And to, like, as I'm listening to this, I'm like, there are so many people who need to hear this song and be like, okay, I need to check my beliefs and check, like, I don't know. It is a powerful song. It is the reason why he is sort of the contemporary god of folk music, because of things like this. This is just like, and this isn't even his best folk song, like crazy. One of his best songs is on this album, The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll. I was going to say back when I was talking about the Desire album that part of my issue with Desire is the long stories that he tells. The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll is a story about something he read in the newspaper about a rich man who killed a maid and pretty much walked away with nothing. He was white, she was black, of course. Race played into it, money played into it, class played into it. It's just a typical story about American society, even today, or United States society, even today. But the song is 4 verses. It's 4 verses. The first verse pretty much describes the facts of the case. The second verse introduces the guy who kills. The third verse introduces the woman who gets killed. And the fourth verse wraps it all up with the horrible injustice that concludes because of it all. Just so, and of course each verse is so perfectly written, but it is so well constructed and so concise, yet so incredibly effective and powerful. Just one of his all-time greats, The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll. Other great songs on this, With God on Our Side is a really kind of, not going to say funky feel, but he's definitely kind of like, it's got a jerky feel that really works. The Ballad of Hollis Brown. There really are no bad songs. But again, it's not as jumpy and bright as maybe other things that come later that are from this period, but almost just great album. The Times They Are Changing. Rambling on this. Number 11, Another Side of Bob Dylan. There's no defense that this is number 11. This is another just fantastic album. This is the one that followed The Times They Are a Changin'. Same sort of format as all the others. Bob Dylan, a guitar, a harmonica, his voice. But this one, on one song, we get some piano. And that's a nice little treat. It's on the second song, so it's almost deceptive because it's like, oh, we're going to mix it up. Oh, no, only on the one song. But that doesn't hinder the album. But what we have on this album that makes this such a significant album that maybe argues that it should be higher is we have songs like All I Really Want to Do and My Back Pages and It Ain't Me, Babe, and the absolutely phenomenal, my favorite, I Don't Believe You, She Acts Like We've Never Met. What a ridiculously great song. But we get this side of now Bob Dylan's like songwriting style, and it is so complete and fully formed and like what is he talking about and what does that line mean and is that nonsense or is that brilliance? Like just flat out amazing songwriting. And the rest of the album is good too. We have some like protest type songs thrown in there. Again, the only reason this is number 11 is I had to find room for those other 10. Possibly A tier, only because I didn't want everything to be S tier. But this is like A plus territory. A plus, almost A plus plus. Just a phenomenally great album. Yeah, no complaints. If you like early Bob Dylan, I think this, as we're leading up towards, the big ones in the late 60s, this is the second best of them all. Yes, one of them still remains. All right, but yeah, what was this? Number 11, Another Side of Bob. Number 10, there's a slow train coming. Such a phenomenal album. Happy it made the top 10, though of course I put it there. This is the first of his religious period albums. The gospel influence has not started to rear its head, so I think it possibly got better reviews because it sounds like a late 70s contemporary rock pop album, sort of a slightly funkier Doobie Brothers, like a Michael McDonald era Doobie Brothers. There's a Supertramp, that I think Wurlitzer sound kind of seeps in on some of the songs. Dire Straitsy, Mark Knopfler is playing guitar. If you know Cass McCombs, he's a recent artist. He kind of a singer-songwriter type, but he has a really kind of groovy kind of style that he reminds me of this album. Very warm sounding album. Absolutely love just the way the music feels. It feels so good. Yes, it's about Christianity. Gotta Serve Somebody. Precious Angel, which is one of those beautiful I Want You type lighthearted songs, but apparently the Precious Angel is God from what I'm figuring out. The title track, so good. A really ridiculous song towards the end of the album called Man Gave Names to All the Animals, and it's just like really silly, like man saw an animal that liked to howl, man saw an animal that liked to growl, and then it's just really weird rhymes that all end with so he called it a bear, things like that. But like I think Snake is like he saw it go into the grass, he saw it go into the lake, and so then man called it snake, but he never actually concludes it. That's the end of it. It's like the snake gets created. It's your biblical tie-in. I butchered the ridiculousness of these rhymes, but it is a really silly, fun song that is also just uniquely Dylan, and I think he pulls it off. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about this album. It's a really good album. It sounds phenomenal. Oh, I always wanted to imagine that, and I know this is not how it happened, but like Dylan recorded this album, decided to do the born again Christian thing and like walked into like a record company executive's office and was like, I'm gone Christian, man. I'm doing a born again Christian album. It's not how he would say it. They're like, oh, really? And then he drops Gotta Serve Somebody, which just starts off with this doom, 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 just like grab your attention type groove. Such a phenomenal album. Yeah, absolutely top 10 worthy. Still A plus tier. Haven't yet made it into the S tier. Some of the songs are just great because I've listened to them so many times. I will admit that. But we're talking A plus plus here. Phenomenal album. Number 10. One more left in the A tier. Number 9, Time Out of Mind. This came out in 1997. This is the first of his, and for me, the best of his post-80s current run of pretty consistently great albums. This one definitely has more of a rooted in the blues and early rock style, not as old-timey, for lack of a better word. Has a very dark energy about it, but in the best way possible. Just consistently strong songs, but for sure some of the highlights, the opening Lovesick has a really dark lovesick energy about it. Cold Irons Bound is just phenomenal. Maybe one of his best songs, like top 10 worthy song. I think one of his best sort of ballady melodies that he's ever written is in the song Standing in the Doorway. That is just such a, like, it sounds like another song, I think. I think maybe he may have lifted it from something, or it's just a perfect melody. And the closing Highlands, which is over 16 minutes long. It was the longest song he had released at the time. His most recent album has a longer song. Doesn't reach 17 minutes yet. The longest song. But this one is just one of those epic storytelling Dylan songs where he rambles and addresses a whole bunch of topics. And there's a part in the middle where there's this really long interaction with this waitress. He tries to order hard boiled to have them. She knows he's an artist. She asks him to draw her. He says he doesn't have his pad. She gives him a napkin. He says he doesn't have his pens. She gives him a pencil. He draws her like quickly. She says that doesn't look like me. He says it does. There's all these incredible one-liners and the forced rhymes that are brilliant because it's Dylan. And then it goes off into other territories after that. But it is this really incredibly interesting, very specific detour in this otherwise somewhat like not generic, but like more universal song. Just brilliant. And it ends the album and it's phenomenal. But the whole album has a very engaging, very dark, definitely not modern sound, but it also doesn't have like an old sound. It almost has, I want to say it is like a timeless sound, a timeless, bluesy, dark energy kind of prevails in this album in the best way possible. A plus 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 plus. Don't know why it's not S tier. Probably should be. But yeah, we're just gonna leave it there. That's where we're gonna stop. Number 9, Time Out of Mind. So that's it for the 8 tier albums. Arguably, some of those probably should have been S tier, but I don't know. People got to suffer, right? So anyways, let me know what I messed up on, what I'm right about, what I'm wrong about, why my opinions suck. Or just tell me what your lists are or how you disagree with me or whatever. That's all. You know how comments work. We're adults. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. Be safe out there. And go Celtics, man. That is a good series if you're watching the NBA playoffs. Go Celtics. My Spurs are out. Of course, I'd be rooting for the Spurs if they were in it. But go Celtics. All right. Peace, y'all.